Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the opposition. The motion tonight is focused on one of the most important institutions in our country, an institution which each of us rely on to keep our friends safe, to keep our family safe, to keep ourselves safe. And it's because of its importance that it's absolutely vital for us to have confidence in our police force. And it is with deep regret that I have to say that I have no confidence in the police force. Now, let me first explain what I mean when I say that I have no confidence in the police force. First of all, we're talking about the police force as a whole, not individual police officers. Now, that means the 43 police forces in the UK, but it also is inextricably linked to the Police Federation, of which every police officer is a member, and all of whose members are serving police officers. Now, to have confidence in the police force, we need to be confident about two separate things. The first is that we have to have confidence that our police officers are capable and well-intentioned. Now, there is scope here for my honourable friends of the proposition to talk about racial profiling, excessive use of tasers, or trigger-happy police, all of which the police has been heavily criticised for. But they won't be featuring in my speech tonight. I think that for the most part, I do have confidence that our police officers are capable and well-intentioned. At least I have some confidence, because I think that we have some of the finest police officers in the world. So it's the second thing that we must be confident about to have any confidence in the police force as a whole that will form the basis of my speech tonight. It acknowledges that however brilliant our police force is, they're human. They will make mistakes. They will get things wrong. For us to have confidence in the police force, then, we must be certain that whenever there is a mishap, the police force will review the facts impartially or allow the Independent Police Complaints Commission, the IPCC, to do exactly the same thing. And if a police officer is found to have committed a wrongdoing, they'll hold their hands up and apologise without any attempt to hide the wrongdoing. And they'll submit the officer to the appropriate disciplinary procedure. And it's because both of recent and historical events that we cannot now say that we can trust the police force to be open and honest about its mistakes. It has attempted to cover up too much, and it's time for an overhaul. It's time for a new era. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not enough for the opposition tonight to say that only a few police officers have failed us and that the majority do great work. It's not enough for the opposition to say that the cases of misdeeds are few and far between. And nor is it enough for the opposition to point to John Lamb, the constable of Barton in the Beans, and say, he's a decent chap. I think we can have a little bit of confidence in him. Even John Lamb can make mistakes. And for us to have any trust in John Lamb, we must also have trust that the police force will not protect him against the interests of the public if he does make a mistake. But I'm sure that the esteemed opposition will have better arguments than these tonight. They're far too intelligent, experienced, and highly respected. So without further ado, let me introduce the opposition. Speaking first is Sam Barker, who studied law at Worcester College, obtaining the top mark in criminal law. Having tutored in criminal law and criminal justice, he was then called to the bar. And if, like me, you decide to search for him on Google, you can find the Worcester JCR presidential husts of 2011, in which he borrowed phrases from great orators. And I'm sure after tonight, future JCR presidents will be borrowing phrases from him. Next, we have Anthony Stansfeld. He's the current and first police commissioner for Thames Valley Police, having been elected in 2012. He's overseen both a reduction in crime while his budget was still being cut in these last 3 years. So he's yet another example of a Conservative managing money wisely. And finally, we have Damien Green, MP for Ashford and ex-president of the Union, ex-minister for State for the Police and Justice. And it's going to be fascinating to hear about his personal experiences with the police. Now, to combat such esteemed members of the opposition, we're really rolling out the big guns for the opposition, for the proposition, sorry. So Graham Stringer, MP, Labour MP, he's been trained in scientific art, so I'm hoping that he's going to have a precise argument for us tonight. And then finally, David Davis will be summing up, and over dinner he was asked the hypothetical question, if in fact you had won the leadership contest against David Cameron, and if in fact there was the same election results, would you have formed a coalition with the Liberal Democrats? And he said, it's a false hypothetical. I'd have never done as badly as David Cameron. Madam President, these are your speakers, and they are most welcome. The first question we need to ask ourselves tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is why we should have confidence in the police force when the government clearly does not. Speaking to the Police Federation in 2014, Theresa May launched a scathing attack on the Police Federation, as well as the police force, in which he highlighted numerous instances of misconduct and said the organisation had to change from top to bottom. Indeed, Tom Watson, the Labour MP, commented on Theresa May by saying, "What I saw in 2010 was someone with a textbook Conservative Home Secretary playbook. Defend the base, strong on law and order. Over time, I've seen a change. She's become, in many ways, quite radical. She's been prepared to intervene on the police, frankly, as very few Labour MP Home Secretaries were." Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Home Secretary who has become exasperated with the structure of the police force and the unwillingness of its leaders to embrace reform. And when we examine some examples, it's easy to see why. One of the most recent events is, of course, the Plebgate scandal, where multiple senior members of the police force immediately defended officers' actions and called for Andrew Mitchell to resign before getting to grips with all the facts of the case. One Police Federation boss, Ian Edwards, announced that because David Cameron had believed Andrew Mitchell's version of events, he had doubted the honesty of bobbies everywhere. Now, this was before Keith Wallace pleaded guilty to lying that he'd witnessed the incident. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe exonerated his officers as he was announcing the investigation into the affair. Now, crucially, this was before the investigation had been concluded. Sir Bernard later told MPs they had not seen the CCTV footage, which explained events differently. Now, both these examples highlight the culture of our police force, where the reflex action is to defend police officers regardless of the situation. Now, we cannot have any confidence in such a procedure. But it gets worse, ladies and gentlemen. The original police investigation into the three officers found that there was enough evidence to bring disciplinary charges against them. This report was then handed over to the Chief Constables of West Mercia, Warwickshire and West Midlands police forces, and it was then rewritten to clear the officers. This in itself shows the complete inability of the police force to investigate themselves, because their culture is always to protect their own. The IPCC then said they disagreed with the findings of West Mercia Police and launched their own investigation. And what did the Police Federation do? They said that they wanted a judicial review of the IPCC's decision to investigate the three officers. This is ludicrous. Any attempt after attempt is made by the upper echelons of the policing world to block the truth from coming out for fear that officers are going to be reprimanded. This is not a system we can have confidence in. It's a system that is deliberately set up to avoid individual responsibility. It's a system that needs major upheaval. Now, this is just one case of the failure of the police system. Theresa May highlighted in her speech a huge number of others: the Leveson inquiry, the appalling conclusions of the Hillsborough Independent Panel. I could go on and on and on, and I'm sure that my honourable friends of the proposition will expound further examples. So these considerable number of different instances are an attempt to demonstrate the endemic problem within the police force. I'm sure, as I've said, that my honourable friends in the proposition are going to expound them. So what the police have done is they've failed time and time again to investigate their officers properly. And until we see evidence that the necessary reforms are made And until we see evidence that the police no longer has a tendency to blindly support their police officers, regardless of the situation, we can have no confidence in them. Theresa May has set high standards for the police, and I sincerely hope that they'll be met. But right now, we have no reason to trust that they will not cover up the further abuses, which is why I beg you to vote with the proposition.